Hi everyone and welcome to my July Plan With Me video. If you are new around here, my name is Thea and I make videos mainly about bullet journaling. For July I chose this pretty minimalistic and summery theme, which I'm very excited to share with you. Today's video is kindly sponsored by Skillshare. I will talk more about them later in this video, but now let's get into my cover page. I've been wanting to do a beach theme for my bullet journal for a while now and finally decided to do it as July felt like the perfect month for that. I started off by drawing a swimsuit with a black pigma pen fineliner. By the way, if you are curious about the supplies that I use, I have listed all of them in the description box, so check that out if I forget to mention some of them. Besides this swimsuit, I also decided to draw a pair of flip-flops and a beach bag. I was thinking about adding more beach doodles, but I felt like that would have been a little bit too much, so I drew just these three. After I had drawn the main outlines, I grabbed a thinner Pigma 01 fineliner and started to add a little bit more line work. I added this dashed line to the swimsuit and also in the flip-flops as it reminds me of the stitches that you usually have in different clothing. Then I started working on the beach bag. I wanted it to have this basket-like texture, so I drew very loosely some vertical and horizontal lines on it. As you can see, the lines are a bit wobbly and have gaps in them, but that's okay as it makes the bag look more organic. Next I started coloring in the doodles and I actually had to take some deep breaths before doing that as coloring with a darker marker felt a little bit scary. Coloring area this big with water-based markers definitely leaves some streaks behind, but that's okay as we are going to add some details later which makes it less noticeable. For the flip-flops I chose a lighter color and added shadows on the left side. Then I decided to add some pink stripes, but you couldn't really see them, so I went over the area with a darker brown. I feel like the stripes made the flip-flops look a little bit more interesting, and I also added the shadows on the stripes by going over the left sides of them. Finally, it was time to color the bag, and I did this by drawing some vertical stripes in a way that I leave little gaps between them. That way I don't have to use my white gel pen as much, and leaving some negative space actually gives a little bit of a different look. I also added shadows with a darker color on top of the wobbly lines I drew earlier with the thinner fineliner. This way the black lines blend in nicely and aren't as noticeable, which was the look I was going for. After the coloring process was ready, I started working on the background. I wasn't actually sure how this would turn out as my sketch looked a little bit different, so I was a little bit nervous. I decided to add a towel behind the beach doodles and decorated the top and bottom parts with a gingham pattern. Instead of leaving the middle part white, I added some color with a really light marker, which is from the Crayola Colors of the World set, and this was actually perfect for coloring the background as you can't really notice the streaks. Now I'm erasing the pencil marks, which I don't normally show in these videos, but this time I accidentally wrinkled the paper twice and got a lot of emotional damage, so I left it in. Just so you can see where the wrinkles came from. I hate when this happens as you can't really cover up a wrinkled paper, but I guess it makes your journal look more authentic. Anyway, I'm now just adding some leaves on the swimsuit with a white gel pen as I felt like it needed some more details and you can't go wrong with leaf doodles. I feel like the white gel pen and leaf doodles are a must-have for me. With white gel pen you can add some highlights or cover up little mistakes, which I make all the time, and leaf doodles are perfect when you want to draw something quick and easy which you don't have to think about too much. As you can see, I also added highlights in the swimsuit and I added those on the right side as I added the shadows on the left side. By the way, July is actually my birthday month and I'm going to be turning 27 near the end of the month. I was thinking about doing some kind of birthday theme, but couldn't really come up with ideas for it, so I went with this beach theme instead. Anyway, now we are actually making the quote page, and I used a Pigma pen fineliner for the lowercase writing. The quote I chose goes like this: "In this season, progress may be slow, but it is still progress, beautiful progress, and it matters more than you know." To highlight the words beautiful and progress, I used a thicker 08 fineliner and calligraphy instead of printed handwriting. The reason why I chose this quote is that I want to remind myself of the small progress I make towards reaching my personal goals, and I feel like in summertime this kind of progress can be slower than usual. That is totally fine, of course, and I think it's important to give yourself some time and rest after busier times. You don't always have to be super productive, which can be easy to forget these days. After the quote page was ready, I finished off this cover spread by adding some washi tape, and I actually bought this from Berlin. I felt like this was the perfect neutral washi, which doesn't look too warm-toned and matches the other colors really well. By the way, I'm working on the travel journal video that I mentioned on my June plan with me, as many of you were interested in seeing it. It should be up sometime in July, so stay tuned. Anyway, I decided to cut a Dutch door on this cover page as I felt like it needed something extra, and this was a simple way to add some more color. I added washi tape to the tab, and this time I actually folded the washi and used my X-Acto knife to remove the extra, which was a lot quicker compared to what I have usually done. Now the cover spread is almost done, but I will come back to it later as I felt like it was still missing something. Next, I started setting up my monthly spread and I changed the layout of the spread a little bit. I started off by writing the title and drawing the calendar grid with a Tombow dual brush pen in the shade 992. I feel like I've been a little bit stuck lately when it comes to reaching my yearly goals, and I actually talked about this on my new Bujo setup video where I set up a goal setting spread. The reason why I haven't reached the goals yet is that I didn't break them into small action steps which I could focus on monthly basis, so for July I added a little goals section and to-do list next to it, which will help me to see the overview of the things I need to get done. Hopefully this will help me to manage my time better and be more intentional. Anyway, I kept this spread super simple and decorated it by adding a gingham pattern behind the title. Because the title got a little bit lost in the pattern, I went over the edges with a white gel pen so it would pop a little bit more. Finally, I added some color to the every other line in the goals and to-do list sections. On the page on the right, I made my weekly planning section where I can plan my weeks before I have set my weekly spreads. I started adding this section to my bullet journal back in April, and it has been really useful so far as I feel more calm and productive at the same time. This has helped me to stick to the schedules I've created because they are written down instead of being just thoughts in my head. I feel like bullet journaling overall helps to clear your mind and thoughts because you can see them on paper and you don't have to worry about forgetting them. I would love to know how you use your bullet journal and if it's more like a planner or journal for you, so let me know in the comments. Anyway, like I said earlier, I've been feeling a little bit stuck lately and I feel like I've been just repeating the same things in my bullet journal, so because of that I decided to change things up and have my habit tracker on this page as well. Usually I track at least 12 habits or more, but I wanted to try out a different approach, so I chose just the most important 6 habits I would like to focus on this month. Before we get to the next spread, which was more doodle heavy, I'm quickly going to talk about today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community with thousands of inspiring classes for anyone who loves learning and wants to explore their creativity and learn new skills. They have a lot of different classes on topics like illustration, fine arts, and graphic design. Skillshare is also ad-free, so you don't get any interruptions while exploring new skills. I recently took Amanda Lee's class called Art Journaling for Self-Care, 3 exercises for reflection and growth. I really enjoyed this class as it had some great journaling prompts that you could also include in your bullet journal if you want to do some self-reflection or review types of spreads. I also loved the tips Amanda gave on how to make your journal spread visually interesting without planning or sketching it beforehand. These tips don't take too much time away from the writing prompts if you want those to be your main focus, and I'm definitely going to use them in my travel journal. The first 1,000 people to use the link in the description box will now get 1 month free of Skillshare, so definitely go check that out. Thank you so much for Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. And now back to my bullet journal setup. I'm now setting up my mood tracker and chose a similar layout that I used in June as well. This layout has just been working the best for me lately, so I didn't want to change it. I feel like mood tracker is something that people usually skip doing as it's not useful for everyone. I used to do that as well, but nowadays I really like including it in my setup as it helps me to listen to myself and how I'm feeling at the moment. I also like to write out the different moods instead of having a scale of 1 to 10 or different emojis because I find those a bit confusing for some reason. Maybe because it's difficult to rate tired mood, for example, as you can be happy and tired at the same time. I would love to hear if you use a mood tracker and how you like to set it up. Do you use different colors to fill it in or the scale system, for example? Anyway, for the decorations, I doodled a bottle of sunscreen, sunglasses, and a water bottle and towel. These were really easy and quick doodles to draw, but it also depends on how you want to color them in or if you are going to add a lot of details. I decided to add some shading and line work with a thinner fine liner like I did on my cover page as well, as those gave a bit more texture, especially for the towel. Then I filled the empty spaces with some green leaf doodles, and I'm actually using a different green than usual, which is a Tombow dual brush pen in the shade 158. One of you recommended it to me, so I had to get it as it was a perfect, slightly warmer green than the 192 that I normally use. I added some stripes to the towel to make it stand out a bit more, as it would have looked a little bit boring otherwise. I think a slightly lighter color might have been a bit better option, but this works well enough too. After adding the gold details, I started working on the white highlights, which I added on the opposite sides of the shadows. I actually don't have the shadows on the same sides on each item, as I felt like the bottle would have looked a little bit weird in some way if the shadow would have been on the left side. Anyway, I think the highlights made especially the bottle and the towel pop a little bit more. Finally, I finished off the mood tracker by adding the dates on the boxes, and I actually ended up having 3 empty boxes on the bottom because I couldn't bother changing the layout. Then I added a light grid on the background of the center part to finish it off. I feel like these kinds of light grids are such a simple way to make the spread look more interesting if it looks like it's missing something. Next, we are setting up a monthly review spread. This is one of my favorite spreads to use as it really helps me to notice the things that went well during the month, and that's the first thing I will focus on when I'm writing this monthly review. I feel like my brain usually focuses more on things I could improve, so that's why it's really important for me to write the successes of the month first. That way, writing the monthly review feels more like a positive experience for me, and it really helps with having a more optimistic mindset. In June, for example, I'm glad that I was able to spend more time with my sister as I traveled to Berlin to see her. We watched the new season of Stranger Things together, and that's definitely one of my favorites of the month. Let me know if you have watched it, and I would also love to hear if you have any other TV show recommendations. Anyway, for the decorations, I drew a swimsuit and used a lighter color for it just for a change. I also added some stripes on it so it would stand out from the washi tape as that had a very similar color. That's actually why I added the green leaves as well, and I think it was the right choice as the corner would have looked a little bit empty otherwise. After adding the golden sparkles near the swimsuit, I decided to add them on the mood tracker as well. I used a gold jelly roll for this, which is my favorite gold gel pen, and I'm glad I found a new one from Berlin after my previous one ran out of ink. I actually didn't end up buying a lot of stationery there, even though I found some really great stationery stores. I think you can actually see all of the items I bought in this video. I, for example, bought these mini envelopes as they looked really cute and I thought they would be perfect for bullet journaling. For my first weekly spread of July, I decided to use the envelope for making the mini calendar as it was the perfect size for that. I ended up covering the notes header because I was first going to make a normal mini calendar, but then decided to use the envelope instead. After adding the headers and the envelope with the mini calendar, I started creating the layout itself. As I prefer using vertical weeklies, I used a layout which has these daily boxes on 2 different rows. To decorate the page, I doodled a Polaroid picture of a sunset, and I didn't use a ruler for the Polaroid, which was a bit intimidating, but I think it turned out okay. For the illustration, I actually decided to use the colored markers first as I wanted it to look more like a painting, if that makes sense. First I added a basic wash of color and then went over it with kind of a dabbing motion to create shadows. That way the landscape looks a bit more organic as I imitate the texture of the waves and sand. After drawing the sun with my gold gel pen, I started adding white highlights on the clouds, and I actually used a Uniball Signo white pen for this as it's a little bit more pigmented, so it shows up better over these light colors. When I looked at this illustration from far away, it looked a little bit blank, so I decided to add some black lines to give it more definition. I used my thinnest 003 Pigma micron fineliner for this, by the way. It's funny how this illustration looks completely different from this top-down angle because of the gold gel pen catches more light. I guess filming with 2 different cameras is a bonus so you can see the details a little bit better. Anyway, for the empty bottom right corner I drew a beach bag as I felt like that fit the space perfectly. I also added a water bottle and some flowers in it to make it look a bit more interesting. As you can see, I used the same line work technique to create the basket-like texture, and I also followed the same steps for the coloring as I did on my cover page. By the way, this journal that I'm using is from Notebook Therapy and it has 160 GSM paper, so I can add quite a lot of layers to my illustrations without having any ghosting or bleed through. If you are using a journal that has thinner pages, you might have to be a little bit more careful so the pens don't end up bleeding through. I feel like these Crayola markers have a little bit more water in them, so I noticed that I have to wait a little bit longer for them to dry before I erase the pencil marks, as erasing too early can accidentally leave the paper, which actually happened to me on some parts of my cover page. With these other illustrations, I erased the sketches before I started coloring, so this didn't happen again. I just thought I would mention this as I don't usually show the erasing part, and I think it's important to pay attention when you do that. Anyway, my weekly spread is now almost done. To finish off the spread, I added the simple gold lines on the top and bottom of the spread as they looked a little bit too empty, and I felt like adding washi tape didn't suit it that well. After making sure the gold gel pen had dried completely, I flipped back to my cover page as I felt like it needed something more. I decided to add these green leaf doodles on the empty spaces so the spread would have a little bit more color in it. If you sometimes feel like your cover page is missing something or you are not happy with it, I highly recommend taking a little break, as looking at it with fresh eyes really helps. If you work on your illustration for a long time, you focus more on where to improve it, which can lead to seeing only the mistakes or areas that could be improved. This has definitely happened to me many times, and I sometimes notice that the illustration wasn't that bad when I took a break and looked at it after a good night's sleep. Anyway, here's the final flip through of my July bullet journal setup. I do really like how this theme turned out, even though I actually struggled with it a little bit. It fits my style, but I feel like I should try something different for next month, just for a change, as I've been using these neutral colors for quite a while now. I've been feeling this way for a few months now, so maybe I'm starting to go through a change in my style, but we will see. Hope you found some new ideas or inspiration from this video, and make sure to leave thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a sun emoji in the comments if you are still here. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!